The silver hover car glided smoothly through the evening air of New Seoul Colony. Its quiet engine made almost no sound as it moved between the tall, glowing buildings. Inside the car, Dr. Han Kim watched the road carefully. The streetlights made her dark skin glow softly in the dimness of her car. She was tired. The meeting with the Arcturus representatives had gone on for 12 hours. Alien diplomacy was never easy, but today had been especially hard. All she wanted now was to get home, take a hot shower, and sleep. The blue and red lights flashing in her mirror changed those plans. Not today, she whispered to herself, pulling her car over to the side of the elevated road. The police hover bike settled behind her, its lights painting the whole street in alternating colors. Officer Do-won Park had been watching this sector for hours. This was the rich part of New Seoul Colony where important government workers and successful business people lived. The hover car in front of him was expensive. Too expensive, he thought, for someone like the woman he saw driving it. He walked to her window, one hand resting on his weapon. The woman inside looked calm, but he didn't trust that. She had her hands on the steering wheel where he could see them. Good. License and registration, he said sharply. His voice had the hard edge he used for people he thought didn't belong here. Dr. Kim reached slowly for her documents. Of course, officer. May I ask why you stopped me? Her voice was clear and educated. Park didn't like that. In his experience, it meant someone was trying to act above their place. Your hover car matches the description of a stolen vehicle, he lied. Where did you get this model? I bought it from New Seoul Hover Motors last year, she said. All the purchase documents are in order. Park took the documents she handed him. Everything looked legal, but that made him more suspicious, not less. Good fakes were easy to get these days. He studied her license picture, looking between it and her face. Step out of the vehicle, he ordered. Is that really necessary, Officer Park? She read his name from his badge. I've shown you my documents, and they're all in order. Out. Of. The vehicle. He said each word slowly, like he was talking to someone who didn't understand basic instructions. Or are you refusing to comply with a police officer? Dr. Kim sighed quietly. She had been through this before, too many times to count. Slowly, she opened her door and stepped out. She was wearing an expensive business suit that matched her hover car's price tag. Park's eyes narrowed at this. Hands where I can see them. Against the vehicle. His voice had gotten harder. I'm going to search your car. Officer Park, I must object. You have no probable cause for a search. My documents are in order, and I've done nothing wrong. He laughed, but it wasn't a friendly sound. No probable cause. How about explaining how someone like you can afford a Series 7 quantum drive hover car? These cost more than most people make in 5 years. Someone like me? Dr. Kim's voice stayed level, but her eyes showed she understood exactly what he meant. Please clarify what you mean by that statement, Officer Park. He moved closer, trying to use his height to intimidate her. You know exactly what I mean. This is a restricted sector, high-level government officials, and corporate executives only. So either you stole this car, or he let the accusation hang in the air. Dr. Kim stood straighter. She was shorter than Park, but something in her posture made her seem taller. Officer Park, I'm going to say this one more time. My documents are in order. I have every right to be here. If you persist in this harassment, there will be consequences. Consequences. He laughed again. Are you threatening a police officer now? That's a serious offense. He reached for his handcuffs. Hands behind your back. I was not threatening you. I was informing you of the legal ramifications of your actions. She didn't move to put her hands behind her back. Officer Park, I strongly suggest you check my credentials more thoroughly before proceeding. On the ground. He grabbed her arm, ready to force her down. At that exact moment, his communicator buzzed. Officer Park. The voice coming through was sharp and official. Release Dr. Kim immediately. Park kept his grip on her arm. This is a police matter. Who is this? This is Admiral Jai-Ho Lee of the Earth Defense Fleet. The voice became even sharper. And you are currently interfering with a Level 1 diplomatic operation by harassing our premier first contact specialist. Park's grip loosened slightly. Sir, I think there's been a mistake. This woman. The only mistake here is yours. Officer Park. The Admiral cut him off. Dr. Kim's vehicle is equipped with diplomatic transponders. The moment you pulled her over, it alerted my office. I've been watching this entire interaction. Release her. Now. Park's hand fell away from Dr. Kim's arm. She straightened her suit jacket calmly. Dr. Kim, the Admiral's voice continued, I apologize for this incident. We have an urgent situation developing. A transport is on its way to your location. Understood, Admiral. She looked at Park, whose face had gone pale. I assume Officer Park will stay here until the transport arrives. There's some paperwork he'll need to fill out regarding this interaction. Before Park could respond, a sleek black transport ship descended from between the buildings. Its sides bore the Earth Defense Fleet insignia. The back door opened, revealing 2 armed guards in formal military dress. Dr. Kim walked toward the transport, then stopped and turned back to Park. Officer Park, remember this moment. Remember how sure you were about who I was and what I deserved. Remember how wrong you were. She smiled slightly. And know that the aliens I negotiate with every day show more respect for humanity than you showed me tonight. The transport door closed behind her, leaving Park standing alone in the flashing lights of his hoverbike. His communicator buzzed again. Officer Park. It was his supervisor this time. Report to my office immediately. We need to discuss your future with the Colonial Police Force. The transport rose into the night sky, carrying Dr. Kim toward whatever diplomatic crisis needed her attention. Inside, she took out her phone and made a note to herself. Update first contact protocols. Include section on human prejudice. Aliens should understand we're still growing. Down on the street, Officer Park watched the transport disappear between the glowing buildings. His hands were shaking as he got back on his hoverbike. He had just harassed the most important diplomat in the solar system, the woman responsible for keeping humanity safe from alien threats, and he had done it because of the color of her skin. The blue and red lights of his hoverbike reflected off the buildings as he headed back to headquarters, painting the night in alternating colors of shame. The black transport ship moved quickly through New Seoul Colony's night sky. Inside, Dr. Han Kim sat quietly, trying to push the traffic stop incident from her mind. She had more important things to think about now. Dr. Kim, one of the guards spoke softly. Admiral Lee wants to speak with you. He handed her a secure tablet. The Admiral's face appeared on the screen. He looked worried, which was never a good sign. Dr. Kim, I apologize again for what happened with Officer Park, but we have a bigger problem right now. What kind of problem? She asked, noticing how the guards tensed at the question. Our deep space sensors detected something an hour ago, a ship, but it's like nothing we've seen before. The Admiral paused. It's not from any of the 3 alien species we know. Dr. Kim sat up straighter. A 4th alien species. This could change everything. Where is it? Just past Jupiter's orbit. Moving fast. The Admiral looked down at something off-screen. But that's not the strangest part. They're broadcasting a message. In perfect Korean. The transport ship suddenly turned, heading toward the massive First Contact Division headquarters that rose above the other buildings like a silver tree. Its branches were landing pads, and its trunk held the offices where Earth's diplomatic future was decided every day. How is that possible? Dr. Kim asked. They shouldn't know any Earth languages. That's what we need you to figure out. The Admiral's face was grim. They're asking for you by name. The transport landed smoothly on one of the highest branches of the building. Dr. Kim stepped out into the cool night air, her mind racing. A new alien species that somehow knew Korean and knew who she was. This wasn't normal first contact protocol. Inside the building, screens showed the approaching alien ship. It was beautiful in a strange way, like a sea creature made of light and metal. As Dr. Kim walked into the main control room, everyone turned to look at her. "Play the message," she said. A voice filled the room. It spoke Korean with an odd musical quality, like someone singing through water. "We seek Dr. Han Kim, Earth's voice among the stars. We have watched. We have learned. We come to judge." "They've been watching us," someone whispered. "Of course they have." Dr. Kim moved to the main communication console. Every smart species would study others before making contact. She pressed a button to broadcast her response. "This is Dr. Han Kim. I am here." The alien ship's response was immediate. "We witnessed your interaction with the law enforcement officer designated Park. It was educational." Dr. Kim felt her stomach tighten. They had seen that. Her moment of humiliation was their first real look at human society. "We have observed many such interactions during our study of your species," the alien voice continued. "They are concerning." The room was completely silent now. Everyone understood what this meant. The aliens had seen humanity's struggles with prejudice and discrimination. Would they decide Earth wasn't ready for contact? But Dr. Kim smiled. After years of dealing with alien species, she had learned something important. Honesty was always the best choice. "Yes," she said into the communicator. "What you saw was concerning. We are not a perfect species. We have many problems we're still working to solve." Officer Park's behavior was an example of one of our oldest and most shameful problems. She took a deep breath before continuing. "But what you saw wasn't the whole story. You saw an officer act with prejudice, yes, but you also saw how quickly his superiors stepped in to stop it. You saw other humans standing up against unfair treatment. That's also part of who we are." The alien ship moved closer to Earth as she spoke. Its lights pulsed in patterns that reminded Dr. Kim of heartbeats. "We are a young species," she continued. "We make mistakes, but we learn from them. We grow. We try to be better. Unlike some species we've met, we don't pretend to be perfect. We admit our flaws and work to fix them." The alien ship stopped moving. There was a long pause before it spoke again. "Your response is unexpected. Most species attempt to hide their flaws during first contact." Dr. Kim laughed softly. "Hiding flaws just means they'll be discovered later, at the worst possible moment. We'd prefer to be honest from the start." Another pause. The ship's lights changed color, shifting from blue to a warm gold. "This is why we chose to contact your world," the alien voice said. "Not because you are perfect, but because you are willing to be imperfect openly. To learn. To grow." The main screen lit up with new images. They showed the alien species, beings of light and crystal who moved like dancers through their ship. "We are the Helios Confederation. We have watched many worlds, but few show the courage to face their own darkness." Dr. Kim felt tears in her eyes, but she smiled. The very thing that Officer Park had tried to use against her, her identity, her experience with prejudice, had just helped humanity pass a crucial test. "We would like to begin formal diplomatic relations," the alien voice said. "But first, we have a request." "What request?" Dr. Kim asked. "We wish to meet Officer Park." The control room burst into whispered conversations. Admiral Lee stepped forward. "Why would you want to meet him?" "Because," the alien voice said, "he represents an opportunity. His mistake, and how your society handles it, will show us more about humanity than 1,000 perfect diplomatic meetings." Dr. Kim thought about Officer Park, probably sitting in his supervisor's office right now, his career falling apart. "You want to use this as a teaching moment. For both our species," the alien agreed. "Will you help arrange this?" Dr. Kim looked at Admiral Lee, who nodded slowly. "Yes," she said. "I will, because that's what humans do. We take our mistakes and try to turn them into something better." As she left the control room to make arrangements, Dr. Kim thought about how strange life was. An hour ago, she had been just another victim of prejudice. Now she was helping turn that ugly moment into humanity's first step toward a new alliance. Behind her, the alien ship's lights pulsed like stars, waiting to see what humanity would do next. And somewhere in the city below, Officer Park was about to learn that his worst professional mistake would become part of something much bigger than himself. Officer Do-Won Park sat in a plain white room in the 1st Contact Division headquarters. His hands were shaking as he stared at the table in front of him. Just 3 hours ago, he had been a regular police officer doing what he thought was his job. Now he was about to meet actual aliens because of his mistake. The door opened, and Dr. Ha-In Kim walked in. Park stood up quickly, his face red with shame. "Dr. Kim, I'm so sorry. I had no idea." She held up her hand to stop him. "Officer Park, this isn't about who I am. This is about who you thought I was, and how you treated me because of that thought." Park sat back down heavily. "They're going to fire me, aren't they?" "That depends on what happens next." Dr. Kim sat across from him. "The Helios Confederation wants to meet you. They saw our interaction, and they think it can teach both our species something important. The aliens saw what I did." Park's voice was barely a whisper. "They've been watching Earth for a while," Dr. Kim explained. "They've seen many interactions like ours, but they chose this one to focus on. Do you know why?" Park shook his head. "Because of what happened after. Because my superiors stepped in. Because there were consequences for your actions." She leaned forward. "Many species hide their problems. They pretend to be perfect. But humans, we face our mistakes. We try to learn from them." A soft chime filled the room. On the wall, a screen lit up showing the alien ship hanging above Earth like a beautiful dream made of light. "Are you ready to meet them?" Dr. Kim asked. Park straightened his uniform nervously. "Do I have a choice?" "There's always a choice, Officer Park. That's another thing that makes humans special." The screen changed, showing the inside of the alien ship. The Helios beings floated there like living stars, their bodies made of crystal and light. Park gasped. "Greetings, Officer Park." The musical voice spoke perfect Korean again. "We have been very interested in meeting you." Park looked at Dr. Kim, who nodded encouragingly. I don't understand why. I made a terrible mistake." "Yes," the alien voice agreed. "You did. You judged another being based on their appearance. You used your authority to cause harm rather than help. These are serious errors." Park's shoulders slumped. But the alien continued, "Mistakes are not the end of growth. They are the beginning. Tell us, Officer Park, what have you learned?" Park was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "I learned that I'm not as good a person as I thought I was. I've been telling myself that I treat everyone fairly, but I don't. I saw Dr. Kim's skin color and made assumptions. I didn't see her as a person. I didn't see everything she's done for humanity." "And now?" the alien asked. "Now I see how small my thinking was. Dr. Kim talks to beings from other worlds. She helps keep humanity safe. And I almost ruined that because of stupid prejudices that I shouldn't even have." The alien beings moved closer to their screen, their light dimming to a soft glow. "In our studies of Earth, we have seen many instances of prejudice. But we have also seen change, growth, improvement. It is slow, but it happens." Dr. Kim spoke up. "Officer Park, the Helios Confederation has made an unusual request. They want you to help with their diplomatic mission." Park looked shocked. "Me? But I'm just a police officer. And after what I did." "Precisely because of what you did," the alien voice said. "And because of what you are learning from it. You will speak to other law enforcement officers about this experience. You will help them understand their own prejudices. You will be proof that growth is possible." "You want me to teach others?" Park asked in disbelief. "Who better?" Dr. Kim said, "You've lived it. You've seen how wrong assumptions can be. Your story can help others understand their own biases." Park looked down at his hands, then back at the screen where the alien beings floated. "Will this help? Will it really make a difference?" "Change happens one person at a time," the alien voice said. "Each mind that opens, each heart that grows, they all matter. Your mistake could have been just another sad story. Instead, it can be the beginning of something better." A new voice came through the room's speakers. It was Admiral Lee. "Officer Park, if you accept this assignment, you'll be transferred to the First Contact Division. You'll work under Dr. Kim's supervision, helping to create new training programs for law enforcement across Earth's colonies." Park turned to Dr. Kim. "You would work with me after what I did." She smiled. "Officer Park, my job is to help different species understand each other. Sometimes those species are human. Will you help me?" Park stood up straighter, his shame starting to turn into determination. "Yes, yes, I will." The alien beings glowed brighter. "Then let us begin. There is much work to be done." As Park left the room later that day, he felt different. The weight of his mistake was still there, but now it had a purpose. He would use it to help others avoid the same errors. He would turn his prejudice into progress. Dr. Kim watched him go, then turned back to the alien screen. "Thank you," she said, "for seeing the potential in this situation." "Thank you," the alien voice replied, "for showing us that humanity's greatest strength is not in being perfect, but in always trying to be better." Outside the First Contact Division headquarters, the sun was rising over New Sol Colony. Its light caught the alien ship, making it shine like a new star in the morning sky. A star that had come to Earth not despite humanity's flaws, but because of how they faced them. The next day, Officer Park would begin his new job. He would tell his story to other officers, helping them see their own biases. It wouldn't be easy. Change never was. But as Dr. Kim had shown him, 1 year had passed since the night of the traffic stop. The Helios Confederation's ship still hung above Earth, but now it was just one of many. Their vessels filled the sky like new constellations, bringing knowledge and friendship to humanity. In a large classroom at the First Contact Division headquarters, Officer Do-Won Park stood before a group of police officers from across Earth's colonies. Behind him, a screen showed footage of his encounter with Dr. Kim from that fateful night. "That officer in the video," Park said, pointing to himself on the screen. "He thought he was doing his job. He thought he was protecting his community. He was wrong." The room was quiet. Every officer watched as the scene played out. They saw Park's prejudice, his aggression, and then the moment everything changed. Some of them shifted uncomfortably in their seats, seeing themselves in his actions. "I'm showing you this," Park continued, "because every one of us needs to face our prejudices. We need to understand that the person we're judging might be someone who talks to aliens for a living." He smiled slightly. "Or they might be just a regular person who deserves respect either way." At the back of the room, Dr. Han Kim watched quietly. She had seen Park give this presentation many times over the past year, but it still moved her. Each time, his words reached someone new. Each time, another mind opened a little wider. A young officer raised her hand. "But how do we know when we're being prejudiced? Sometimes it feels like we're just following our training." "That's the hard part," Park admitted. "We have to question everything we think we know. Every assumption, every gut feeling. Ask yourself, would I treat this person differently if they looked different? Would I make the same decisions if they were more like me?" The door opened, and everyone turned to look. 3 Helios beings floated into the room, their crystal bodies casting rainbow lights on the walls. The officers gasped. Most of them had never seen the aliens up close before. "Please, continue," one of the Helios beings said in their musical voice. "We find these sessions very enlightening." Park nodded, used to their visits by now. The Helios Confederation chose Earth as an ally not because we're perfect, but because we're willing to learn. They saw humanity's problems with prejudice, but they also saw our potential to grow beyond it. The aliens moved through the room, their light dimming to make the officers more comfortable. One of them spoke. "Your species is young, but you have something rare. The courage to face your flaws openly." Dr. Kim walked to the front of the room to stand beside Park. "Every alien species we've met has had their own prejudices to overcome," she explained. "The difference is how we handle them. Do we hide them, deny them, or do we face them and try to be better?" A Helios being floated closer to the screen, studying the year-old footage. "Officer Park's transformation is a model for what we hope to see across your world. Not instant perfection, but constant improvement." Park looked at the image of his past self, then at the room full of officers. "A year ago, I almost ruined humanity's chance at a crucial alliance because I couldn't see past my own bias. Today, I help others learn from my mistake." That's how change happens, one person at a time, one lesson at a time. After the session, Park and Dr. Kim walked through the building together. Through the windows, they could see the Helios ships glowing against the sunset sky. "The new training program is working," Dr. Kim said. "Complaints about prejudicial treatment are down 30% across all colonies." Park nodded. "It's a start. We have a long way to go." "Progress isn't about reaching the end," she reminded him. "It's about keeping moving forward." They reached the observation deck where, 1 year ago, Park had first met the Helios beings. The view of Earth and the alien ships still took his breath away. "Sometimes I wonder," he said quietly, "what would have happened if I hadn't pulled you over that night." Dr. Kim considered this. The Helios would have found another way to contact us, but they might not have seen what they needed to see, that humans can learn from their mistakes, that we can change. The sun set behind Earth, and the Helios ships began to glow brighter, like stars coming out in the evening sky. In classrooms across the colonies, other officers who had gone through Park's training were making different choices, better choices. The change was slow, but it was real. "Next week, we're expanding the program," Dr. Kim said. The Arcturus Collective asked if we could help them with their own prejudice issues. They saw what we're doing here and want to learn from it. Park smiled. "So my mistake is going to help aliens now too." "That's the thing about growth," she said. "It spreads. Each person who learns touches others. Each lesson shared creates new understanding." In the growing darkness, the Helios ships pulsed with light, a reminder that humanity wasn't alone in its journey toward being better. Above them, below them, and all around them, Earth was changing. Not because anyone forced it to, but because people like Park had the courage to face their flaws and learn from them. As they watched the stars come out, both the natural ones and the Helios ships that now looked like part of the sky, Park thought about how far he'd come from that night 1 year ago. He had been so sure about who deserved respect and who didn't. Now he understood that everyone deserved respect, and the only thing he could be sure about was that he still had more to learn. The future stretched out before humanity like an endless road of possibilities, and thanks to one traffic stop that could have gone very wrong, but instead went very right, that road was now filled with more light than darkness. In the end, it turned out that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in being perfect. It was in being willing to learn from their mistakes, to grow beyond their prejudices, and to keep trying to be better. One person, one lesson, one day at a time.